about the importance of the culture in the company, how the teams in the company operate and what an impact that can make on the product you deliver, whether you deliver on time and whether you deliver it to the quality that's needed. So the culture is really important to drive a high-performing team. And I'm kind of interested, what I'm going to do is make this a bit more interactive, so I really want to find out a little bit more about the culture where you guys work as well. This will be a group discussion and kind of talk about how things work where you are, how you'd like things to work, previous companies, all that kind of experience. So I'm not going to be doing much talking tonight, it's going to be you guys. Okay. I keep mentioning this culture. What do I mean by that? It can be many things. I'm not defining culture in its completeness, but some examples of it. How do the teams form? So Rowan mentioned as well, forming teams by customer segment rather than by product or function is one example. So how are the teams formed in the organisation you work? How are they structured? How are they managed? Line management versus functional management, that kind of thing. How do the teams interact? How does management communicate to teams? And of course there's also things like agile, etc., which is a methodology maybe, but it's really inherent in the culture as well. You can't just change the way things work without addressing the impacts of the culture and the people that you work with, making sure they're the right kind of people. So, as I said, I'm not going to talk very much. I want to show you a video now, and I don't know, I apologise to any of you who've seen this. How many people have seen this video already? Okay, good. So, not everybody. I saw this recently. It really impressed me just how they talked about it. They admit themselves that this is a work in progress, so what you're about to see, they haven't achieved to perfection themselves either. They're adjusting and improving it all the time. But I thought this would be really interesting to show you. So let's have a look at it, and then afterwards have a bit of a chat about the culture of software engineering.
One of the big success factors here at Spotify is our agile engineering culture. Culture tends to be invisible. We don't notice it because it's there all the time, kind of like the air we breathe. But if everyone understands the culture, we're more likely to be able to keep it and even strengthen it as we grow. So that's the purpose of this video. When our first music player was launched in 2008, we were pretty much a Scrum company. Scrum is a well-established agile development approach, and it gave us a nice team-based culture. However, a few years later, we had grown into a bunch of teams and found that some of the standard Scrum practices were actually getting in the way. So we decided to make all this optional. Rules are a good start, but then break them when needed. We decided that Agile matters more than Scrum, and Agile principles matter more than any specific practices. So we renamed the Scrum Master role to Agile Coach, because we wanted servant leaders more than process masters. We also started using the term squad instead of Scrum team, and our key driving force became autonomy. So what is an autonomous squad? A squad is a small, cross-functional, self-organizing team, usually less than 8 people. They sit together and they have end-to-end responsibility for the stuff they build. Design, commit, deploy, maintenance, operations, the whole thing. Each squad has a long-term mission, such as make Spotify the best place to discover music, or internal stuff like infrastructure for A/B testing. Autonomy basically means that the squad decides what to build, how to build it, and how to work together while doing it. There are, of course, some boundaries to this, such as the squad mission, the overall product strategy for whatever area they are working on, and short-term goals that are renegotiated every quarter. Our office is optimized for collaboration. Here's a typical squad area. The squad members work closely together here with adjustable desks and easy access to each other's screens. They gather over here in the lounge for things like planning sessions and retrospectives. And back there is a huddle room for smaller meetings or just to get some quiet time. Almost all walls are whiteboards. So why is autonomy so important? Well, because it's motivating, and motivated people build better stuff. Also, autonomy makes us fast by letting decisions happen locally in the squad instead of via a bunch of managers and committees and stuff. It helps us minimize handoffs and waiting so we can scale without getting bogged down with dependencies and coordination. Although each squad has its own mission, they need to be aligned with product strategy, company priorities, and other squads. Basically, be a good citizen in the Spotify ecosystem. Spotify's overall mission is more important than any individual squad. So the key principle is really be autonomous, but don't sub-optimize. It's kind of like a jazz band. Although each musician is autonomous and plays his own instrument, they listen to each other and focus on the whole song together. That's how great music is created. So our goal is loosely coupled but tightly aligned squads. We're not all there yet, but we experiment a lot with different ways of getting closer. In fact, that applies to most things in this video. This culture description is really a mix of what we are today and what we are trying to become in the future. Alignment and autonomy may seem like different ends of a scale, as in more autonomy equals less alignment. However, we think of it more like two different dimensions. Down here is low alignment and low autonomy, a micromanagement culture. No high-level purpose, just shut up and follow orders. Up here is high alignment, but still low autonomy. So leaders are good at communicating what problem needs to be solved, but they are also telling people how to solve it. High alignment and high autonomy means leaders focus on what problem to solve, but let the teams figure out how to solve it. What about down here then? Low alignment and high autonomy means teams do whatever they want and basically all run in different directions. Leaders are helpless and our product becomes a Frankenstein. We're trying hard to be up here, aligned autonomy. And we keep experimenting with different ways of doing that. So alignment enables autonomy. The stronger alignment we have, the more autonomy we can afford to grant. That means the leader's job is to communicate what problem needs to be solved and why. And the squads collaborate with each other to find the best solution. One consequence of autonomy is that we have very little standardization. When people ask things like, which code editor do you use? Or how do you plan? The answer is mostly, depends on which squad. Some do Scrum sprints, others do Kanban. Some estimate stories and measure velocity, others don't. It's really up to each squad. Instead of formal standards, we have a strong culture of cross-pollination. When enough squads use a specific practice or tool, such as Git, that becomes the path of least resistance, and other squads tend to pick the same tool. Squads start supporting that tool and helping each other, and it becomes like a de facto standard. This informal approach gives us a healthy balance between consistency and flexibility. Our architecture is based on over 100 separate systems coded and deployed independently. There's plenty of interaction, but each system focuses on one specific need, such as playlist management, search, or monitoring. We try to keep them small and decoupled with clear interfaces and protocols. Technically, each system is owned by one squad. In fact, most squads own several. But we have an internal open source model, and our culture is more about sharing than owning. Suppose Squad 1 here needs something done in System B, and Squad 2 knows that code best. They'll typically ask Squad 2 to do it. However, if Squad 2 doesn't have time, or they have other priorities, then Squad 1 doesn't necessarily need to wait. We hate waiting. Instead, they're welcome to go ahead and edit the code themselves, and then ask Squad 2 to review the changes. So anyone can edit any code, but we have a culture of peer code review. This improves quality and, more importantly, spreads knowledge. Over time, we've evolved design guidelines, code standards, and other things to reduce engineering friction, but only when badly needed. So on a scale from authoritative to liberal, we're definitely more on the liberal side. Now, none of this would work if it wasn't for the people. We have a really strong culture of mutual respect. I keep hearing comments like, my colleagues are awesome. People often give credit to each other for great work and seldom take credit for themselves. Considering how much talent we have here, there is surprisingly little ego. One big aha for new hires is that autonomy is kind of scary at first. You and your squad mates are expected to find your own solution. No one will tell you what to do. But it turns out, if you ask for help, you get lots of it, and fast. There's genuine respect for the fact that we're all in this boat together and need to help each other succeed. We focus a lot on motivation. Here's an example, an actual email from the head of people operations. Hi everyone, our employee satisfaction survey says 91% enjoy working here and 4% don't. Now that may seem like a pretty high satisfaction rate, especially considering our growth pain. From 2006 to 2013, we've doubled every year and now have over 1,200 people. But then he continues, this is of course not satisfactory and we want to fix it. If you're one of those unhappy 4%, please contact us. We're here for your sake and nothing else. So good enough isn't good enough. Half a year later, things had improved and satisfaction rate was up to 94%. With this strong focus on motivation, it's no coincidence that we have such an awesome reputation as workplace. Nevertheless, we do have plenty of problems to deal with, so we need to keep improving. Okay, so we have over 50 squads spread across 4 cities. Some kind of structure is needed. Currently, squads are grouped into tribes. A tribe is a lightweight matrix. Each person is a member of a squad as well as a chapter. The squad is the primary dimension, focusing on product delivery and quality, while the chapter is a competency area, such as quality assistance, agile coaching, or web development. As squad member, my chapter lead is my formal line manager, a servant leader focusing on coaching and mentoring me as engineer, so I can switch squads without getting a new manager. It's a pretty picture, huh? Except that it's not really true. In reality, the lines aren't nice and straight, and things keep changing. Here's a real-life example from one moment in time for one tribe. And of course, it's all different by now. And that's okay. The most valuable communication happens in informal and unpredictable ways. To support this, we also have guilds. A guild is a lightweight community of interest, where people across the whole company gather and share knowledge within a specific area. For example, leadership, web development, or continuous delivery. Anyone can join or leave a guild at any time. Guilds typically have a mailing list, biannual on conferences, and other informal communication methods. Most organizational charts are an illusion, so our main focus is community rather than hierarchical structures. We've found that a strong enough community can get away with an informal, volatile structure. If you always need to know exactly who is making decisions, you're in the wrong place. One thing that matters a lot for autonomy is how easily can we get our stuff into production. If releasing is hard, we'll be tempted to release seldom to avoid the pain. That means each release is bigger and therefore even harder. It's a vicious cycle. But if releasing is easy, we can release often. That means each release is smaller and therefore easier. To stay in this loop and avoid that one, we encourage small, frequent releases and invest heavily in test automation and continuous delivery infrastructure. Release should be routine, not drama. Sometimes we make big investments to make releasing easier. For example, the original Spotify desktop client was a single monolithic application. In the early days, with just a handful of developers, that was fine. But as we grew, this became a huge problem. Dozens of squads had to synchronize with each other for each release, and it could take months to get a stable version. Instead of creating lots of process and rules and stuff to manage this, we changed the architecture to enable decoupled releases. Using Chromium Embedded Framework, the client is now basically a web browser in disguise. Each section is like a frame on the website, and squads can release their own stuff directly. As part of this architectural change, we started seeing each client platform as a client app, and evolved 3 different flavors of squads: client app squads, feature squads, and infrastructure squads. A feature squad focuses on one feature area, such as search. This squad will build, ship, and maintain search-related features on all platforms. A client app squad focuses on making release easy on one specific client platform, such as desktop, iOS, or Android. Infrastructure squads focus on making other squads more effective. They provide tools and routines for things like continuous delivery, A/B testing, monitoring, and operations. Regardless of the current structure, we always strive for a self-service model. Kind of like a buffet. The restaurant staff don't serve you directly. They enable you to serve yourself. So we avoid handoffs like the plague. For example, an operations squad or client app squad does not put code into production for people. Instead, their job is to make it easy for feature squads to put their own code into production. Despite the self-service model, we sometimes need a bit of sync between squads when doing releases. We manage this using release trains and feature toggles. Each client app has a release train that departs on a regular schedule, typically every week or every 3 weeks, depending on which client. Just like in the physical world, if trains depart frequently and reliably, you don't need much upfront planning. Just show up and take the next train. Suppose these 3 squads are building stuff, and when the next release train arrives, features A, B, and C are done, while D is still in progress. The release train will include all 4 features, but the unfinished one is hidden using a feature toggle. It may sound weird to release unfinished features and hide them, but it's nice because it exposes integration problems early and minimizes the need for code branches. Unmerged code hides problems and is a form of technical debt. Feature toggles let us dynamically show and hide stuff in test as well as production. In addition to hiding unfinished work, we use this to A/B test and gradually roll out finished features. All in all, our release process is better than it used to be, but we still see plenty of improvement areas, so we'll keep experimenting. This may seem like a scary model, letting each squad put their own stuff into production without any form of centralized control. And we do screw up sometimes, but we've learned that trust is more important than control. Why would we hire someone who we don't trust? Agile at scale requires trust at scale. And that means no politics. It also means no fear. Fear doesn't just kill trust, it kills innovation. Because if failure gets punished, people won't dare try new things. So let's talk about failure. Actually, no. Let's take a break. Get on your feet, get some coffee, let this stuff sink in for a bit, and then come back when you're ready for part 2, okay?
So, what do you think of the video? Interesting way of working. So anybody feel they work in an organisation that's working any way like that at all? Yeah, you are? Are you allowed to name names? Which organisation, and remind us which company you work at? Oh, you're not. You would like to.
Expressing desire.
Yeah. Spotify are not here.
I think even they are trying to reach that fourth quadrant, probably, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the high autonomy, high alignment. Yeah. Does anyone feel, Brooks, does anyone feel you're getting anywhere close to that? Are your organisation trying to change the culture in any way? Not seeing that at all. Amal?
Yes. So we are aggressively thinking about agile transformation. The point he has made that a lot of confusion happens because of lacking the regular interactions with the end user client. So it is helping. We have been executing for more than 4 years Scrum, and we are trying. There was one example like Agile is greater than Scrum. So we are trying Kanban and XP as well. So which is we are trying different agile methodologies at the moment. So it's not only Scrum restricting to the 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and not specific to the roles as well. So Kanban is even probably more advanced. So we are progressing towards Kanban now. So yeah.
Interesting.
But
Okay.
it's not organizational wise. There is we are trying across the organization, but it will take time. As I said, it's a cultural change. Agile is I would say probably not a process change. It is a mindset change. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So how have you gone about, if you don't mind me picking on you, how have you gone about triggering that culture change? What steps have you taken?
Crisis drives the change. So yeah, I think the release, there was example like there is a monolithic applications, everybody like 16 projects looking at each other, are you ready, and then we are putting into the production. So to decoupling that example, so we are trying about that, how we can decouple the releases, so whoever is ready, they can take that train and deploy into the production. So that was pretty valid example.
Okay, so the architecture of your system is being redesigned as well as the culture.
We are redesigning the architecture as well. So it won't be that easy change, and we have been doing this for more than 4 years now, so we are getting there.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a question. Actually, it's for everyone who's applying agile methodology in their team. How do you guys think QA is evolving in an agile world? Do we still have like a QA entity when you're in an agile? Now, I've heard this, and I'm not part of this team. What they're trying to do is, the group is, they don't really have a specific roles, so each person can do requirements gathering, a person can do development or testing or project management. So there's no specific role to an individual. So what they do is, a member is called a feature member. That's a name. So what they do is, when they are in the requirements gathering phase, everyone in the team, as they call it squad, goes to requirements gathering, and no one else does anything. It's just requirements gathering. And when they do coding, they all code. So for those people who are not really developers, they tend to learn coding. So they do pair programming. So now my question to everyone is, you guys think about testers, where do we fit in an agile world? If the industry is going into this direction, how are we going to be, how are we going to evolve and fit into this kind of model?
I think this is what I have said from my experience. There's a lot of discussions going on in many organizations. They all started testing as a practice, then the team has started expanding, and then now many organizations have a big testing team sitting in one side. But there is also a discussion about how do we improve the time to market. So making a small change, if it takes about 2 weeks to get into production, with all the layers of approval, sign-offs happening. Everybody is thinking about that opportunities, right? So surely the momentum is, whether it is agile or not, or whatever is the process we follow, irrespective of that, there is a clear business mandate how quick we are deploying the changes, how quick we are able to get the positive experience, or fixes going in, right? So surely there, as the industry evolves, independent testing team as a group may not be like what it is today, right? It may be more like, this example was very Spotify what I was telling us, like the horizontal map across multiple teams or whatever, I can't remember the term now. Right? So it may become like more like a community which is there, but it will not have a strict independent testing team sign off going through multiple layers of it, which is more like a bureaucracy, right? So even banks are thinking in this line, though they have all the regulatory requirements. So, but on the other side, there is a cultural impact. What I have seen is agile is not very good for testing. If you see in a different, because what's happening is how good are they in understanding the requirements, how good are they in even writing the requirements. Agile doesn't mean that you should not do certain activities. Agile need to be followed in short cycles with the same rigid discipline that will be followed in one. So what is getting missed out is people are not even understanding what to do or know what to understand, what to write as a requirement, and then start a discussion to implement. So after doing all the things and then in a rush, and then they find like okay, when they do the testing, and even during deployment, complete noise is created. So that is part of the culture we have to bring in, and it could be like as you're telling, testers need to understand how to develop, developers need to understand what you are coding, how to test it, and as we write the requirement, can be tested, even as a requirement can be validated. So many other aspects are there. There is a momentum to improve across all the roles that we have and make it more like a coherent effort. But that's the way it will be emerging going forward.
I was like different opinion in terms of how testing is management. Although it is to say that testing is not decoupled from development in an agile environment. My point of view is we are there. An example that you mentioned is during the requirement gathering stage. What do we do there? I think it's a way where we're given an opportunity to guide the requirements in such a way that it's a lot easier for us to do our test. Designing for testability is one of the things that if you read about it, as early as requirements gathering stage, understanding how the business thinks of the requirements, what kind of tool, what kind of third-party application we're going to use on the system. So design and architecture. We'll be given an opportunity to say, hey, this actually is, it's better for us to use this one because it's a lot easier to automate. So a more upfront automation is more, is going to save more time to market is going to be better. So I think in going back to the point that if we are not decoupled from the development team, we have very specific roles and we have to play and not try to blur the line when we do that role. So if you're a tester, do your job as a tester. And static testing, review the requirements based on what you think the business perceive or want the application to be delivered. So things like that.
Yeah. Is it realistic to expect that everybody can work in an agile team and be excellent at requirements gathering and development and testing? And we can all just switch hats and be experts at all of that. Is that a realistic situation? Do you all want to be developers as well as testers, as well as deploying and all of that? It's, I think, though it sounds, I'm not sure there's many teams that are actually doing it that way, that are meaning everybody can do everything. Everyone might be involved in each activity, as Con was saying, but they have a role to play based on their skill set. But it is a common question coming up. I mean, I hear a lot that testing is dead because of Agile. You guys heard that as well? But it's up to us as testers to fight back and make sure that that isn't the case. Perhaps by really showing the skills that we have, how they're unique, how they're different to the rest of the project team. As Con was saying, go in, be there at the requirements design and add our quality thoughts at that point. Sorry, Rankin, yeah.
Can I just add, requirements are expectations.
Yeah.
That's where my talk fits into this. And I think one of the things is if you can take that concept of expectations back into the testing process, it's under the heading and the language you use is requirements, but it's still an expectation.
Yeah.
And so thinking in those terms, particularly if you can use the external customer, will help you.
Yeah, absolutely. And most requirements are perceived expectations, unless you've got access to your users. But,
well, one of the challenges, let me ask you, how many of you find out that you know more about the situation than your internal customer does? Yeah.
yeah.
So in other words, there is an education of the internal customer needed. It's a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah. And most of the time we try to say no to some customers. When we try to request something and we try to say no at this time. We can make it at this time, but as of now, we'll have only this.
Yeah. So limited. Yeah. There's an education piece here.
Yeah.
Educating your internal customer.
Absolutely. And actually in true Agile, the internal customer should be involved in that team as well. Does that happen for you, Emma, or the business get?
Yeah, absolutely.
They do get involved.
And it is very interesting to hear testing is dead with respect to Agile. I mean, as I said, we have been practicing for 4 years. So testing, I agree with you, there are no specialized role as such in Agile world. However, as Leah touched upon, if you would like C#.NET, would you be able to exactly want to be developer? No, but there is a lot of scope for testers to work out through the automation testing, like behavior-driven development is one of the things. So we are working, when our testing team is integral part of Agile team, and they are helping us to do the automation testing and behavior-driven development, which is about identifying the user stories and helping. It's requirement gathering, and I'm sure everybody knows user story is it's not a big blown functional story, it's a short specific user story, what role, what is the reason, and what is the value. So the testing team is involved from the day one. They are into the discussion, so they understand exactly what is the value we are going to achieve out of this requirement or user story. So they are able to help us do the testing to build the product right.
I want to share my one. Actually, we are also implementing every day the Scrum meeting, Scrum Master, and as a QA, we are more focused, more interaction. Even one developer is sharing their difficulties when do the thing or face due to the thing in the requirement phase problem. As a tester, I have experience. I can help them to achieve that thing also as part of my sharing knowledge. So more interactable one. Even every in the development team, anyone facing difficulties, each of them also can share to overcome the difficulties. So I think, according to my thing, is more useful for testers because we already started to using and currently using to implement. Every day we are doing the Scrum meeting. Every day we are keep on releasing that more focused. What the customer expectation, whether we are in what place now, in where we need to reach. So it's more focusing teamwork.
Thank you everyone for all your your inputs. It's just a question in my mind that I mean, just for everyone's information. I'm a tester, and I've been in the testing. I've been doing testing for more than 10 years. So, but I shifted my skills, my career into doing business analysis and project management. So that question has been asked to me one time. So yeah, so it's really good that to get everyone's opinion, that those who are really in an agile. I've had an experience working in a semi-agile, or we call it hybrid. It's still waterfall. They just it's a lie. Basically, they just say that we're doing agile, but really it's not. It's just a concept of because we're doing Scrum, we're doing agile, but really it's not. So I'm more interested to find out from those people who are really working on an agile methodology. And yeah, thanks.
Did you notice what they called the testers in that video? Did anyone pick up on the term they used when they were talking about the chapters and the tribes and everything? They called it quality assistants.
Yes.
Yeah, so not assurance or testers, but quality assistants. And that, I think, goes back to you help improve the quality right from the beginning as a tester in that kind of culture. And it makes our jobs a lot more interesting. It's not just write scripts and execute. So, what do you guys think about the autonomy element? Do you think it's good to have a team or an organisation made up of many, many teams who are free to do anything they want, however they want? What do you think about that? Any thoughts?
Guided autonomy.
Yeah.
In automated state, but guided in some way. So still stick on the goal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Key is about getting that goal clearly communicated out.
And there's also an advantage in a case like Spotify where the size is small. The autonomy aspect comes. You look at most of the startups as they grow in the initial years, that culture would resemble a lot of what you hear from the Spotify today.
True.
Some years back, I used to work for Palm, a company that doesn't exist anymore. But the culture, Palm was like 800 to 1,000 employees at any point in time.
Yeah.
That's what the size was. And the culture was very, very similar to that.
Okay, so you think that
Scale has a relevance on the autonomy aspect.
I think we all assume that is the case. It would be interesting to see some of these companies keep growing and see whether this...
And maintain that.
Yeah, whether it can work or not. I don't know if anyone knows of any companies that have. You do? So there are companies that have kept this kind of culture as they expand.
What I did is we have a small company. So when I came in, I injected the sequential methodology. Because last time we are a small company that has no process at all, no development. And they have their own process, but it's in chaos. So I started I kicked in, and for 6 months, I ironed their process. So for the last 3 years, we had this sequential approach because we did a context that basically fits sequential.
Yeah.
Then this context changed just recently this year. So what I did is I now will change their mindset to more into agile. So slowly I transition them from sequential to agile. And our testers find it hard to cope up because they are used to doing manual and in an agile it's more on test driven type of thing. But they are still useful in so many ways because if you're doing agile, it's more on quality, not just into the software. So you have to deliver more quality.
So it can be quite challenging to change an existing team, change the culture on an existing team.
Yeah, it's very, very, very tough. Just came in from the big discussion. You said last 3 years ago that this is good, and now after so many years you say this is better. And how can you guarantee us that for the next year there will be no changes? So
a lot of people are scared of change. It can be scary if we don't introduce it in the right way.
Do you mind if I add something to the story? That model I've been using since 1994, it's called the leadership model. If you want to know a company we did use it, still uses it, was founded using it, it is the Nissan factory in Sunderland in England. And the book was written called The Ascendant Organisation. Ascendancy is the top right box.
Yeah.
And it's called The Ascendant Organisation. Its author is Peter Wickens. If you want to buy it, I think you can still get it. But can I draw on the wall, because I can help you think about this. You talked about change. The model does recognize a couple of things. It is much, much easier to build an organization with this model than change one that's already something there. But if you take the model, is it possible to turn the lights on there? The first thing you do, if you're in an organization and you have the authority to be able to change it, you have to find out where you are now. Surprise, surprise. Does that sound familiar? And as it said on the model, down here is low, all right? So we have low alignment, low autonomy. How does it feel to be in that box? What's it feel like? Bad.
Claustrophobic.
Terrible. Can you think of an organization or type of organization that fits in that box? Or what people do in this box?
Follow orders.
Try and get out.
It's called abdication. People don't want to do anything. They're not motivated, they don't feel excited, they don't know direction, and they've got no autonomy. What's this box like? High alignment, low autonomy.
Really bad.
Even worse.
Disaster.
Not quite, actually. Yeah. I'll give you a clue. All the words start with A. Hmm? It's in the army. It sounds like that. It's a military organization, yes. It's actually called autocracy. And funnily enough, speaking as somebody who spent 20 years in a military organization, it isn't like that in military organizations. And do you know why? Because military organizations have to devolve responsibility right down to the most junior person. Those who fought in Afghanistan, people involved in that, the delegation of autonomy is extremely high. People don't realize that, but that actually is the truth. It's the person on the ground, the junior person, who has to make decisions. Bottom right, what's it feel like? Begins with an A. Somebody called it chaos. It is. Have a guess.
Anna.
Yes. Now, some organizations need anarchy. Creative functions in advertising agencies, they need to be anarchic. They're about changing the rules. Yes? Business schools are anarchic. They're individual professors doing their own thing. They're not aligned behind anything common. Heaven forbid. Absolutely not. And this is ascendancy. Okay? And it's the book is called The Ascendant Organization. Now, the question for you is, where are you? Where is your organization? And the fun game for this, if you do this with your team, is ask your boss to put a mark on the chart where he or she thinks you are, for you to put a mark, and for your team to put a mark. What do you think happens? Have a guess. Where do you think the marks are? Where does the boss think they are?
Most bosses put themselves
Yeah.
Where do you think you are? And your team? Somewhere down here. That's extreme, but they tend to sort of go in a line. The challenge is this. If you in an organization, let's say you're here, okay? And you want to get up there, there's two routes possible. That route or that route. Which is best?
Does it depend on your organisation? It would depend on your organisation.
It does depend on the organisation. In fact, the correct answer is a series of steps up the middle. But what are the consequences of choosing this route?
You may never get.
As you said, Melissa, you get chaos. Yeah. What's the consequences of choosing this route? psychological people respect, people reaction. The consequence is that people don't like being given orders early on. They find it tough. The alignment piece is the hardest piece of all. However, I was doing this in 1996 with an organisation, and a lady in the group turned around and said, well, that's very interesting. That's China, and that's Russia. Which one would you prefer? Which has been more successful? China's high alignment and then more increasing levels of autonomy given to people in the country. Russia have got oligarchs and chaos, and now they're trying, that's what Putin's trying to do, is to do this. And of course he's finding it very difficult. Interesting analogy, isn't it? I thought it was brilliant.
There's a question before about what size company can sustain this sort of model. When you said you've got...
Well, Nissan started from scratch.
And they've got how many users?
Oh, I don't know how many employees in that particular factory. It's the most successful factory they have in the world. And it's probably 6,000 people, something like that. But they've got heavy emphasis on, as the film set it out brilliantly, heavy emphasis on getting high levels of alignment and high levels of autonomy. If you're interested in this stuff, the book to read is called The Art of Action. And it's written by a friend of mine called Stephen Bungay. And he tells you how this all came about. Any of you historians here? Because it's based on history. It goes back to the Battle of Jena and Auerstedt in 1806, when the Prussians were defeated by the French. And that leads me on to the last point about the model and the thing they were saying there. It is very culturally specific.
Yeah.
That, what's Spotify? What country does it come from? Yes. Swedish. And that culture is easier to do in Sweden than many other countries because of the national culture. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so interesting. Go back and think, whereabouts on here does your organisation sit? And is it trying to change that? Is there anything in place trying to make a difference, trying to make improvements where you work? Okay. I think we're just about coming to an end. Is there anything else from the video? Sorry, Ilya, you've been trying.
Oh no, I was just saying.
I thought you were trying to say something earlier. I didn't get to you.
Earlier I was just going to say about autonomy being apparent, and when it is taken away, or when if the opposite of autonomy is being micromanaged, that is very disenfranchising, demotivating. And particularly if the person who you're under, for whatever reason, doesn't command your respect, that situation is a bad situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone once told me, you don't leave your company, you leave your boss.
Yes.
Anything else that anyone wanted to pick out from that video before we end the session? Okay.
Is part 2 out?
It's not yet. So part 1 came out in January. So keep checking the Spotify website to find out when part 2 comes out. Or maybe we'll do it in a future session. But I'll put it on the website anyway when I see it come up. So, great. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay, so big thank you to Leah and Rowan for your presentations this evening, and to yourselves for attending and supporting this event that we're running here in Singapore. Just a couple of things. If you've got feedback on the event, as ever, if you could make a note on the forms and maybe just leave them on the chairs, we'll collect them up afterwards. Just a quick show of hands though. By and large, we've been trying to run these forums sort of 2 to 3 months at a time. Do people think that's about the right sort of time scale? Would they say maybe, so who thinks 2 to 3 months is about the right sort of frequency? Would anyone say more like 4 to 6 months? No? Okay, just trying to get some feedback on that.
It's too far apart that people tend to forget about the event. 3 months is kind of frequent enough, but not too frequent for people to want to go to it.
Okay.
Keep the interest.
Okay. Good.
Thanks.
All right, well, thank you very much for attending, and as ever, we'll post details of the next event when we have a date fixed for it and some topics.
And I should also, sorry, just to jump in there, the website is up and there for you to use. There's forums on it as well. I think we're going to try and get a Facebook thing going as well, and that might be easier to get information to you. Please help spread the word. The weather is shot in the foot, I think. Tonight we've got a few less people than we normally have here, but spread the word. And also we're always looking for speakers, for people to come and run sessions. It doesn't always have to be a person standing up. You know, the more interactive the better. So if you've got ideas, if you want to help get involved, please get in touch with us through the website, through our email addresses. However, thank you. Sorry.
All right, thanks guys. No.
Thanks.
Hope to see you next
very
time.
much.